Hello, my name is Mindahi Bastida from the Otomi Toltec peoples from central Mexico. And it's my great pleasure to be here today talking with my beloved friend and colleague, Dr. Kurt Johnson. And today we are going to talk about my book, Ancestors. And well, Dr. Kurt Johnson has been a key collaborator in this. So this is about the Common Sentence series. And I like to bring to the audience, Dr. Kurt Johnson, please.
Yeah, Mindahi, thank you. And such a pleasure to be here. And before I revert back to you to ask you to talk about ancestors and why they're so important, this whole phenomenon, there's no doubt that one of the most important things happening globally today in a part of our global transformation and evolution is more and more people having this deep access to experiences downloading from the subtle realms. And that's such an important part of this deeper understanding that we need to have at a planetary level to build out this world that can work for all. So Mindahi, back to you then to talk about this entire phenomena, ancestors, the subtle realms, you, your book, and turn it back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been a journey about ancestors and how we recall this remembrance of lineage, and in relationship also to the sacred sites, because all of us, we have this connection. Thanks to our ancestors, we are here. Let's not forget about that. They are guiding us, they are watching us, they are feeling us. So it's in our tradition when we say our ancestors are here, it's because when we die, we become soil, we become oil, we become the so-called now fossil fuels. If we are not respecting what life is, then we are not respecting ourselves. We are not respecting the future generations to come. So that's the reason ancestors is not just talking about blood lineage, but it's talking about entities, deities, you know, the mountains, the rivers, Mother Sea, Father Sky, because they were before us, and they are the ones who are living in ourselves. They are the ones who are giving life to ourselves. So what do you what is your wisdom about ancestors and how they come to the subtle realms? I know that you have big experience about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so important here is that in this time, you know, what you just mentioned, these energies, deities, presences, download into our consciousness in very, very specific ways. I think everyone knows the word numinous. When you have an experience, it's so deep, it propels you deeper than anything else. And there's not only a message, but there's something that it asks you to do. So for instance, even when we look at Mindahi's entire life and other workers like him, they've been directed by these subtle realms in very specific ways with regard to what their work is, how to carry it out, where and with who. And this is really something that's underpinning the whole global transformation today. Just one little comment I'll make on that is that, you know, that we're really looking today for this harmony of interfaith, interspirituality, global harmony, this oneness of a global civilization. And so there's a tendency we know from neuroscience that when people have this deep vertical experience, they'll also tend to interpret it across the line of their horizontal experience from their own tradition. And that's actually fine. But the awareness that we have to have is that when we have these deep experiences that are so specific, that we actually see them in the universal way that is serving the larger picture and not fall into the trap of just our part of the story, that our story may be more important than someone else's story, and so on, because we're working toward this world that works for all and this global harmony. So we don't want to introduce division when it comes to our explanations or our claims about these stories. So maybe Mindahi, what you can do is tell about how these experiences have propelled your own life and mission where you're so known all around the world for being a leader of sacred sites and of indigenous peoples. And I know you've based that on very clear direction.
Yes, for the beginning, I must say that I come from a lineage of my grandmother, that she was hit by the light, and then you know, we come from traditional healers and healers. So that's very important because it's another way of connecting with mystery, and also in this material world, how we act in such a way that we are guided by our ancestors, and how we can bring harmony and peace and regain collective dignity as human beings in front of other relatives. So that's why we honor so much sacred sites, because those sacred sites are the places where the energy is being, you know, manifested and strong. It's like the acupuncture points of Mother Earth. So it's where, you know, the entities and deities dwells, and they are the ones who are bringing this energy that we need for this life. So in my personal experience, I can say that I have experienced this touch with our ancestors. Whenever I have a big problem, I call and I pray to them, because they are the ones who can guide me, and they can also manifest during their lifetime. So that's why we honor so much the ancestors. Even in general, I come from Mesoamerica, from Mexico, and we have a special fiesta, special ritual for the Day of the Dead, you know, and we put together offerings, we put together, you know, fruits, food, beverages that our ancestors used to like. But it's not just to the human ancestors; it's also to the ones who were before. So that's very meaningful, because in that case, some animals like the butterflies, they are manifested through the souls of our ancestors. So that's the reason we have that deep connection in another level, in another way of dealing with, living with these entities. So
yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways that people can think about this who are watching is think of the entire Earth and the entire cosmos really as a super organism, interconnected and all involved, each part with each other, from the highest to the lowest. And so when Mindahi talks about, just like our body is made up of acupuncture points and energy meridians and everything has to work together, actually the entire realm of consciousness, the subtle realms, the Akashic field, the planet itself as Gaia, the entire cosmos is really in that sense a superorganism. And a part of what we're starting to understand today as a species is this inherent deep connection with the entire cosmos at that level. That's how we were created. That's how all of this information was enfolded. And so people who are doing the kind of work that Mindahi is doing and have these abilities to hear into those realms and sense into those realms, they can really be deeply and specifically directed toward the work that's needed right now at this time. So Mindahi, tell us a bit about the work you're doing with sacred sites and why that healing and that re-energizing is so important.
yes, we have been going to the most affected sacred sites, but also the most important sacred sites around the world. We have been in Mount Fuji, Mount Etna, Mount Blanca in the Four Corners. You know, Mount Fuji is in Japan, Mount Etna is in Italy. And we can see how they are connected in the spiritual, not just in the material world, but in the spiritual world. Because the entities who dwells there, and people have forgotten how to reciprocate. They have forgotten the rituals and the ceremonies. So that's the reason our presence is very important. And we need to ask the locals to remember that connection. Because sometimes we move from one place to another place, and we don't even ask permission. We have to ask permission to enter this other space, because around the sacred landscape, there are specific sacred sites, and we know that Mother Earth is suffering now because of climate crisis, climate change, whatever it's called. It's because of the misbehavior, because we have forgotten how to live with Mother Earth, not from. So that's different. And the work we are doing around sacred sites is to for the healing and balancing on Mother Earth. Is the healing is so important because we are going there to put some prayers, offerings, and to the deities and to the entities that are there and have been forgotten. So that's the work we are doing, reconnection, remembering.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, what people need to remember to understand this is that this is an experience in consciousness, an experience of individual humans in consciousness. And think of like when you decide that it really heals you and makes you feel connected when you visit the grave of a beloved. Why would you do that? Well, you go there because you're in that proximity in your consciousness with the entire realm of what your connection and experience has been with that person. So that becomes real. And the message that you go away with, that you feel comforted, that you feel healed, is real to you. And that's what's really happening at a global level when people like Mindahi and the other ceremonialists are going in and communicating with these deep, deep places that have so many layers of this consciousness. So one thing I wanted to point out, and it's actually in the book in a number of places, is that because there's a tendency for modern people to think that some of these experiences that Mindahi is talking about aren't real, what's really important is that when you see the fruits of what's being done by the third-party validation, by witnesses and others, of the fruits of that work. It's one thing to make a statement and to say, we need to do this, we need to do this, and this is going to happen. But when that actually does unfold, it's a testimony to this deep connection that Mindahi is talking about, and that these experiences are not only real, but they're absolutely necessary in how our species becomes deeply intertwined now with the whole cosmos, and not just experiencing separation and isolation.
That's right. And, every time I talk about these issues with other people, they are remembering sometimes, and they are afraid sometimes to share these experiences. But I think this is the time now to come together and really help each other. So I like to know your own experiences, your experience, because you are one of the the authors here in the beautiful book of Ancestors. Please tell us what is your experience, Kurt, and how we can learn from that experience.
Yeah, well, what I'll say about that, and it's very typical of many of the other chapters in the book, it goes back to that word numinous, that you have an experience in consciousness, and there's not only a message there, but there's an instruction of an action to take, something to do. And then you actually know the validity of that action when that actually unfolds in a way that validates that this was something that was important for service, for knowledge, whatever the case may be. And my own chapter, and also Dr. Julie Kroll's chapter, she's a psychologist in the book, we're giving very clear examples that were undeniable about these kinds of intervention from the deeper consciousness world. And then they're unfolding in reality as validated, not only like in my case, by other leaders in the spiritual community within my chapter, but that of course is what's propelling the success of your entire work. So what I'd like to ask you, Mindahi, to kind of wrap us up here if we need to, tell us about how you're seeing your future and your calling with all of the sacred sites around the world, and where that's really leading to a larger global healing, a larger global deeper wisdom, and all of those aspects that First Peoples, Indigenous peoples have access to those knowledges that many of us have just forgotten.
Yes, ancestral wisdom is key for our survival as human species. And we know that we need to go to those places to mend the, what is being desecrated. And we need to raise awareness, consciousness about what we are doing in our lives with nature and the sacred. So we need another way, another narrative, but not just another narrative, but another kind of action. We have to put intention for the sacred, how we relate each other. And that's why it's so important to protect sacred sites. And not just to protect them, but also to work with them, because the entities and the deities that dwells there, they are doing their work, but they also need a spiritual reciprocity. That's why the work we are doing is so important, because ancestors are not just the past. Ancestors is the present, the ancestors is the future.
Right. So following on that, speaking to people who are listening to us and obviously maybe having experiences like this or in their own future deeper experiences, what is the advice that you would give them about how they would approach those experiences in their own life?
Yes, the advice is just to reconnect, to be aware that we are not alone, and we have never been alone, and we won't. So it's just the reconnection with the sacredness. Just to take some moments during the day, at dusk, at the sunrise, at noon, just to take some minutes and stop whatever you are doing and just connect, breathe, and be aware that you are alive. But we are not here forever. We are just for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. To deeply listen. And as you give yourself permission for that deep listening, to see really how that unfolds in super positive ways in your own life, because then you're going to understand and feel this direction from those subtle realms. And that's an absolute gift to anybody's life. So, Mindahi, I just wanted to mention there's an entire issue of our free magazine, which people can find at issuu.com/light-on-light, and simply look at the cover. There's a picture of Mindahi on the cover, and the title is Sacred Sites and Spirituality in Nature. The reason I mention it, there's an entire section on how Mindahi visions this work at a global level and the various sacred sites they've visited and what they've done there. So Mindahi, tell us again, just to send people on their way with a new experience and a deep looking forward to how this can manifest for them.
Yes.
How you see this whole future.
Yes, thank you for that. And I see that we can make it. We can do it together. There's no other way. We have to go from competition to collaboration, from the me to the we. And that's key, because as you know, we are passing these difficult times all together. We are in a cleansing time, but we must learn from each other. We are not alone. We have our ancestors to guide us. And that connection is so important, because we came here for a purpose, and the purpose is for the care of life and transcendence. So thank you so much, Kurt, for this beautiful conversation. And it's always a great honor to be with you, learning from you, and your wisdom is great. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks from all of us to you, Mindahi. I know everybody at a global level looks at you as a very important leader for these times. And I know that that's going to continue to unfold. So not only you, but your entire family that are so deeply involved in this transformative work. So just a heartfelt, gigantic hug from everyone in the world for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.